So in this segment, we're going to be talking about the Chris Pincher scandal, the one that finally really took Boris Johnson down. So there's a timeline of events from a Guardian, an Independent article, the Independent, which says June 30th, 2022, Mr. Pincher resigns as Deputy Chief Whip after allegedly assaulting two fellow guests at the Carlton Club, a Tory private members club in London's Piccadilly the evening before. So he allegedly assaulted someone on the 29th of June by the looks of it. And this is where things really unravel for the Tories, because they just kept lying. Boris Johnson allegedly kept lying about this. It was madness. Caroline Noakes reported Pincher for being wasted during the day, during that event. And, it's a consistent problem he has. You even got, Boris Johnson's own wife, thingy against him, briefing against him, Carrie Johnson, openly questioned Pincher's suitability as a whip as far back as 2017 when she was working at CCHQ at the time. She even questioned him. So you've got his own wife, Boris Johnson's own wife, briefing against him, which is wild. You've got the alleged quote that apparently Boris Johnson said Chris Pincher by name, Pincher by nature. And even though Tories deny he said that, you can imagine Boris Johnson saying Pincher by name, Pincher by nature. You can imagine him saying that. It's the exact thing he would say, and then he'll laugh about it. A senior Downing Street source told The Independent that the PM was given a direct first-hand account of claims against Pincher before promoting him to Deputy Chief Whip. So you've got the allegation that he's been told directly by this. In fact, you've got this tweet here, saying Boris Johnson was told 5 times about Chris Pincher's behaviour. 2019 during the first reshuffle, late 2019 when the FCDO investigation started, the Foreign Commonwealth Development Office, I think that is. Late 2019 when the FCDO investigation concluded. February 2020 told again at the reshuffle. February 2021 told by Propriety and Ethics team. So evidently he was told about this. And we go to the person who actually did the investigative journalism and figured this stuff out. She works for the BBC, but for some reason wrote this article here. Ione Wells, her name is, right? She kind of details it really, really well, what kind of happened. So she says, it was less than 24 hours since the Sun's Noah Hoffman broke the story that Pincher was resigning from government after allegations he groped 2 men at a private members club. Journalists gathered for their usual day of briefings from number 10, where the Prime Minister's official spokesman comes armed with a file packed with agreed lines for the day. So essentially they have to speak with someone who has gone through it with the Prime Minister and been told exactly what to say, right? That day, the line was the Prime Minister was not aware of any specific allegations about Pincher before he was appointed. Now, she hasn't actually given dates on when this stuff happened, right? But what we know is that on the 30th of June, a lot of this stuff started coming out. So in the space of about 2 weeks. And that's very important because normally Tory scandals take a lot longer for the right information to come out. Remember Partygate? That took months, right? This was spawned over 2 weeks. This was one of the reasons why it was so damaging. Because ministers almost in real time were getting debunked by civil servants, former civil servants, and other people within the Tory party. Concerns about his behaviour were Westminster's worst kept secrets. So they all knew about this. Whispered about in hushed tones in the corridors, tea rooms and terraces of Parliament. But there is an important difference between rumour and establishing provable fact, especially when people's reputations are involved. That people may have known that he's, a groper, but without, actually proving it, no one really did anything, because apparently no one in the Tory party went to the police. It was splashed across the press on Friday. At the time, the Prime Minister was not aware of any specific allegations about Pincher. But then a contact approached her. There is something you need to know, they said. Despite what Number 10 was saying publicly, there had been a formal complaint made about Pincher when he was a Foreign Office Minister in 2019. The Prime Minister at the time was his boss. So the Prime Minister probably would have dealt with this allegation at the time, depending on at what point the allegation was brought forward. Now, the journalist goes on to say formal complaints and processes usually have a paper trail. She pieced it together and figured out what happened in 2019, who knew about it, and what action was taken. Meanwhile, more government ministers were wheeled out to tell the public they had assurances that the Prime Minister was not aware of any specific complaints, a line I increasingly knew from my research was not going to hold. And let's not forget, the situation was you had Dominic Raab on TV, saying that there was an allegation, and I think it was Suzanne of Good Morning Britain. She told Dominic Raab that there was an allegation and the allegation was upheld, and therefore Pincher was guilty. Dominic Raab said the phrase guilty is a very loaded term and he wasn't found guilty, but when an allegation is upheld, it means you are found to have done something wrong, which means you are guilty. So yeah, Dominic Raab tried to kind of squirm his way out of it. He really struggled. Why nothing was done at the time, I think the person who made the allegation didn't want anything to happen, but I don't know what fully happened there. On Monday morning, after a weekend of more damaging headlines about Pincher, Number 10 conceded the PM had known about some allegations, but they had been either resolved or did not lead to a formal complaint. She said, "I knew by this point that the latter was not true, that there was a formal complaint." She says, "I needed to show both that a formal disciplinary process took place and crucially that the Prime Minister was aware of it." So she had to evidence that, Boris Johnson knew, essentially. He was told about it in a formal process. She says when she put this to Number 10 on that Monday evening, they told her nonchalantly that they had anticipated this, which was why they emphasised earlier that day that any complaints had been resolved. So essentially Downing Street's news tactic was to say things were resolved, and they knew this story would get out. It was only a matter of time that people would find out that Boris Johnson knew about the allegations. And so their whole big ploy was they were resolved. And then she says there it was, an admission that Number 10, the Foreign Office complaint, would come out. Number 10 knew the Foreign Office complaint would come out, and no denial the Prime Minister knew about it. That was what she needed, that the Prime Minister knew, despite saying that he didn't know about it, he knew. And that's what she got out of it, essentially, because it's not always about what you do say. Sometimes it's about what you don't say, what you don't deny, and they didn't deny it, that they claimed it was resolved. What's a resolution and ending? It could mean guilty or not guilty. They didn't say he was innocent, though, of the allegation. She says after breaking it on the 10 o'clock news, her phone blew up. Journalists, politicians and government insiders were all talking about how the Prime Minister knew the truth about Pincher. By the evening, 2 cabinet ministers had resigned, Javid and Sunak, triggering more resignations, mainly from junior ministers. And the article goes on to talk about some more of the stuff, more of the timeline, essentially. And ministers saying it's another effing lie, it's delusional. One asked if it was a spoof, questioning by how Number 10 could see ministers in the flesh line up, tell the Prime Minister to go. I mean, you had a situation where essentially ministers were told lies. And this exactly the same thing happened with lockdown. I think the same thing might happen with the Patterson stuff. I can't remember, but you can see there's a pattern of behaviour from Boris Johnson, which is lie, deflect as much as you can, tell other people to go on TV and lie about things, and in the end things get out. But ministers get out of jail card is, well, what I was told at the time was this. And you look very stupid as a minister when you have to go on live TV and say, well, a complaint was upheld, an allegation was upheld, but he was not guilty. You look very stupid as a minister when you have to do that. Genuinely, there's a few more things I wanted to talk about. This was the specific interview here. Let's watch some of it. I mean, this is just honestly what Rob said here is so dumb.
Guilty. Actually, no formal disciplinary action was taken.
An investigation.
There was formal disciplinary action.
Upheld the complaint. An investigation upheld the complaint.
Sorry, Suzanne, you're wrong about what happened, and it's important to clarify. It's absolutely true. An investigation took place. I was clear we needed to understand the substance to these claims and what had happened. But in terms of
I'm not sure what we're arguing about here, Mr. Raab.
Well, you're using the word guilty.
Yeah.
You're using the word guilty, and that's simply wrong.
So what does an investigation upheld the complaint of inappropriate behaviour for which Mr. Pincher then apologised mean?
So I'll tell you exactly what it means if you allow me to complete the answer. It means a complaint was made, and I should also say that, but that's often the case in these types of things, the complainant did not want formal action taken. The Permanent Secretary and I agreed it must be properly looked at to determine the veracity of the claims and the context and the circumstances. It was clear the behaviour was inappropriate, unprofessional, but it did not trip the wire of severity to warrant formal disciplinary process.
So he did it. They're saying he did it. The event happened, but it wasn't enough to warrant a disciplinary. Oh, okay. It sounds like it should have done, though.
Rob, what you did in response is one thing. The fact of the matter is, a complaint about inappropriate behaviour was made, an investigation was undertaken, and the complaint was upheld.
No, I agree with that. It's your use of the word guilty, which you wouldn't...
So it's just, honestly, it just made him look very stupid, didn't it? You know, this guy looks stupid on a weekly basis. You know, when you find out about what the Dover, where, you know, how reliant we are on the Dover-Calais crossing, the sea was closed, etc. But you can see here, he's squirming. He's really struggling here to kind of justify what had happened. Honestly, it's madness, absolute madness. He had to do this. And you've got this from Robert Peston, someone who, you know, normally I dislike, but he made the point that the Prime Minister's spokesman confirms that the Prime Minister was informed that a complaint of inappropriate physical contact was upheld against Pincher when Pincher was at the Foreign Office. So a series of ministers and Downing Street officials too misled you, brackets us, when saying for days that the PM had no specific information on misconduct by Pincher before appointing Pincher to the sensitive job of Deputy Chief Whip. Because let's not forget, he was the one who would have to deal with other people's harassment claims. People would go to him and say, look, such and such a person has, you know, talked to me inappropriately or touched me inappropriately. Pincher was the one who would have to deal with that. Imagine being an MP knowing that. It's just wild, especially when this guy, they knew about him. You know, he was, quote, the worst kept secret, his allegations. They knew about him. They did nothing. Genuinely just so frustrating. They lied to us. And you got to imagine, if you're a journalist who had to print this stuff, right, you look very stupid as well because your name's on the paper full of lies. This is the last one, I think. What's this one? Yeah, last one I want to talk about, which is the Tories this year. David Warburton loses the whip over alleged harassment. Imran Khan convicted of child assault. Neil Parish, tractors and adult content. Tory MP arrested on suspicion of rape. Deputy Chief Whip resigns after allegedly groping two men. We also still have the MP who's been banned from Westminster whilst their investigation's going on. We also still have the person who used date rape drugs on someone who, you know, they found him on top of them licking their nipples or whatever it was. It was gross. And we don't know who that is yet. We don't know. And that's apparently happened to more than one male MP. I genuinely just beggars belief that no wonder this stuff keeps happening and people keep getting away with it, because the Conservative Party is not built to deal with complaints. It genuinely isn't. It just gets ignored. You know, the whole Westminster system needs an overhaul, but the Conservative Party more so. You know, if I was running a leadership campaign, I'd be like, look, man, I'll deal with all the dodgy people in the party that have been harassing people, because this is ridiculous. They all knew about him. It's just wild. They just kept letting him do it until eventually it just got too far and the information became public. I mean, look at the state of this. So many Tory MPs been convicted of stuff this year. Just this year. That was in June. Imagine at the end of the year how far we'll get, what we'll find out. You know, Pincher has had the whip removed from him, is under investigation, but they need to get rid of this guy. He needs to be, you know, they need to go to the police or something, because you can't allow this sort of behaviour to continue within your establishment, your party, your organisation. Anyways, I'm going to leave it there. Let me know what you think of the Pincher scandal, the one that finally took Boris Johnson down. Let me know what you think of the video in the comments below. Like, comment, share, subscribe. Support the channel on Patreon if you can, and hopefully I'll see you in the next one.